Florida had a very unique season last year. I think we all remember that. And so I was driving back home last night from Columbus. I was driving up to Nashville and I was thinking about different coaches and what the perception is versus what the reality is out there. And so let's talk about Dan Mullen here. I think 2021 is going to be the defining season for Dan Mullen, even though he's been at Florida several years now. Context is so important in life, and context is important in college football. Think about winning the lottery. Not all lottery winners are equal. Some live happily ever after. Some have their lives just implode in on themselves like a dying star. And similarly, if we were to go to this point last year, number one, it would be great if I told you, hey, you're going to have a football season. Everyone rejoice. But then number two, if I were to tell you Florida fans, you're going to beat Georgia, you're going to win the East, you're going to have a Heisman Trophy finalist, you would just assume we're about to hit our big lottery. But then I say, hold on, I got the shh over your mouth. And I tell you, but you're not going to get it done against Texas A&M. But you're going to implode spectacularly against LSU. You're going to then lose to Alabama. No shame in that, but then you're going to totally no-show a bowl game and get splattered against Oklahoma. That is the downside of the lottery winner. That's your cousin stabbing you in the back. That's your wife leaving you once she takes half, and that's your family all turning on you and your kids hating you. That's that kind of lottery winner. That's how the season ended for Florida. And so now we arrive at 2021, and I said this today, and I'll reiterate it now. It's very strange to be 4 years in. Dan Mullen's entering his fourth season now at Florida. It's really weird to be 4 years in at a very high-profile program and to have a lot of people still kind of on the fence as to, who you are. Like, what is Florida football under Dan Mullen? Well, the answer to that being unclear still is why I think 2021 in many ways is a defining year. Why is it a defining year? Well, it's simple, because Dan Mullen hasn't defined himself fully. I don't think he's defined what Florida Gator football is fully under his tenure. 2020 was not a coronation, as it turned out. Again, if I were to have told you in the preseason, going to win the East, going to beat Georgia, going to have a Heisman Trophy finalist, you would have thought, okay, well, certainly, even if we don't win the SEC or we win a national title, they will be saying about us at the end of the year, we have arrived. They weren't saying that. You guys in Gainesville weren't even saying that. But it did serve as a reset button, because even though things were disastrous towards the end, there was a certain element of kind of a reset button hit. Because a lot of people going into last year found it very popular and very in vogue to say things like, well, Dan Mullen can't beat Kirby. Well, you can't say that once he beats him. Well, he can't win the East. Well, you can't say that once he wins the East, so reset button, reset button. You've also got that very, very popular talking point at this point with Florida and Dan Mullen, which is, well, he can't recruit. No, he can't recruit a number one class. He hadn't recruited a top 5 class. They've recruited well. It's just all about context. Okay, what do you think Florida recruiting should be? My personal opinion is, yeah, I think they should be better than they are. But guys, they're averaging a top 10 finish over the last few years under Dan Mullen. It's not like they've been hanging out in the mid-20s and the low 30s. Like, they've done good. It's just that's it. They've done good, or maybe even really good. They haven't been elite. They haven't been great. And it's all within the context of who you have to face. You're looking at their schedule right now. If you're watching on YouTube, they got Bama in week 3. Severe underdog, even at home against Alabama, because they don't recruit on par with Alabama. They go to LSU. They'll be a big underdog. They don't recruit on par with LSU. You got Georgia the next week. They do not recruit on par with Georgia. And so any given year, you're talking about a quarter to a third of your schedule, given the pace they're currently recruiting at, being against teams that are going to feature a better roster than you. That doesn't mean you can't beat them. They handled Georgia last year. It just means everything has to come together every time. Because you see, the way I look at the 2020 Florida team, it's a very mixed result. There are a lot of good takeaways. It's great that you beat Georgia. That's wonderful. It's great that you won the East. It's phenomenal that Dan Mullen took a quarterback he didn't even intend to start initially and ended up sending him to New York City. That says a lot about the capability of your program. But then I also look, on the other hand, about the inability to have a team ready to play LSU, the inability to have quality depth to where you can afford to lose a starter here and there and still maintain the same cruising altitude and the same speed. Florida can't do that with their current talent roster. Now you start adding layers of depth and you can afford to do that. But look, it doesn't really matter whether you're pro Dan Mullen or anti Dan Mullen, whether you're sold on him, Gator fan or not, whether you're sold on him as the guy who can take you to the mountaintop or not. Because all that's just talk. Eventually the season gets here. This one I think is very significant within this context. It's just hard to me to handicap the future of Florida under Dan Mullen. And when I say future, let me be clear. I mean within the context of, can they win an SEC championship? Can they win a national championship? Should always be the goal at Florida. You should be recruiting at an elite level. You should be contending for national championships every year. I think the NFL noise after last year meant something. It certainly didn't mean nothing. You could have arguments about whether it was ever serious. I think it was serious on Dan Mullen's part. I think there was a lot of interest there. Now, some guys can turn that switch on and off. Some guys can look elsewhere, and then when they look back over here, they can be totally razor-sharp focused and zoned in, and it doesn't affect them. I'm in the remains to be seen camp on that, but we'll know very early. So that's, again, one of the many reasons why I look at 2021 as a defining year, because if that little theory is right, if there were serious overtures made, or if there was a lot emotionally from Dan Mullen's point of view invested in maybe trying out the NFL waters, a normal person could run the risk of checking out mentally on his current job. Now, Dan Mullen's not a normal person. You don't rise to the level he's at in the industry being a normal person. However, it's just something to keep an eye on, okay? Because if you see them operating at a high level early in the year, forget about all that. That's meaningless. The second thing that you then focus on is Emory Jones. Emory Jones holds a lot of the cards here. Because Emory Jones, obviously, for those unfamiliar, quarterback that's going to start for Florida this year, he's not a true freshman. That's a guy who's been on campus several years now. So whatever Dan Mullen's going to do with him from a developmental standpoint, it should be done by this point. And so you're going to see it. Now, there is no substitute for in-game reps. But short of just being able to start an entire season, Dan Mullen's got what he's got in Emory Jones. I'll tell you what could go a long way in changing the narrative here. That's just flat out Emory Jones being a lot better than you think he's going to be. Because I can tell you what the popular sentiment's going to be for Florida going into this season. Outside of Gainesville, people are going to think they're going to take a step back for production-wise. They're going to take a step back. Emory Jones is not going to be as good as Kyle Trask. Let's see, all the preview magazines tell me they've got only, 5 or 6 returning starters on offense. And so the perception is going to be they're going to be down. That's not a bad thing. Perception doesn't matter. They don't give you wins and losses for perception. If anything, I think it's a good thing because it doesn't mean that you got a white-hot spotlight on you coming into 2021. But here's the thing about lukewarm expectation. You better not fall short of the lukewarm expectation. You fall short of the insane, high-end expectation, like Kirby does sometimes with Georgia, that's one thing because you can go 10-2 and still fall short. But if they're expecting 8 wins from you and you go 7-5, or if they're expecting 9 from you, you go 8-4, 7-5. That's a little bit different deal. I think 2021 is such a huge year because this is not a roster void of championship caliber talent. They don't have it in as plentiful a supply as the other big boys. But make no mistake about it. If things click, starting at the quarterback position, if things really click for Florida, if Dan Mullen is who I and many people think he is as a developer at that position, you saw what happened last year when quarterbacks figured out. You saw what can happen at a lot of other positions. You get that synergy. It felt really good at times last year for Florida, and then kind of got erased down the stretch. So let's have a lot more front end than back end of 2020 as it relates to 2021.